Well guys, you've been asking for it, and here it is. The all-new Specialized Turbo Vado SL2. And SL stands for super light, so yes, it's lightweight, it's powerful, and to me, it looks like the stealth fighter of e-bikes. But how does all that translate to real-world riding performance? Well, stick around with me, and let's take a deep dive on the all-new Specialized Turbo Vado SL2. And spoiler alert, it's pretty awesome. All right guys, so the all-new Turbo Vado SL. So it's a class 3 commuter, meaning it can get to 28 miles an hour with pedal assist. It's also a good fitness style recreation type bike, a little bit of a do-it-all, but it has the theme of a commuter first. Now the price is $6,500, and that's one of several trim levels available. It's kind of a mid-tier trim, and we'll talk about those options as well in just a bit. But the bike itself weighs in, they advertise it as 39 pounds, 10 ounces, and that's for the medium frame. We have the large frame here, and this one weighted on our scales right at 41 pounds, which makes sense, a little bit more frame material to cover the larger size. Now, when it comes to colors, they have two color options. This one is the satin black with speckled gray. At first glance, it just looks like a matte black from a distance, but when you walk up close and really look at the paint, you can see the speckled dark gray all throughout, and it has a very cool, clean look. That's kind of why I always think of this as like a stealth fighter type of bike. Now, one caveat is, as much as I love this color, I will say I've noticed living here in an area with a lot of dust and sand and a deserty area, this type of paint with kind of this porous surface will show a lot of dust. But they also have a satin red color, which is like a burnt red and a matte finish that looks very good as well. That would conceal more of the daily dust that the black. So kind of a personal preference thing. I think I'd probably still opt for the black because it just looks so cool when it's nice and clean like this. Now, when it comes to sizes, one thing that's nice about these big brands is they have this in 4 sizes. So you've got a small that fits riders from 5'1" to 5'5", a medium that fits riders from 5'5" to 5'10", and then the large like we have here that fits riders from 5'10" up to 6'1", and then the extra large, which fits people 6'1" up to 6'4". Now for this large here, like I said, it fits riders 5'10" to 6'1". I'm 5'11", and the bike fit me perfectly. It was just very dialed in for my reach and size, my upper body. I couldn't have asked for more when it comes to fit. It's dialed in very well when it comes to that. Now, some geo numbers for this specific frame in the large. The standover height is 32.4 inches. The wheelbase is 46, and that's from the rear hub to the front hub. You have 16.9 inches of reach here, and then you have 10 inches of adjustability here in this carbon seat post. And that's another good point to kind of talk about here. This bike, part of the reason why this thing is able to weigh in as low as some of the trim levels are as low as 33 pounds, is because it's a carbon fiber frame all the way through. It's also the SL, so super light, has the lighter weight motor, but don't let that fool you. It's still got lots of power, which we'll talk about. And it's got a carbon fork and, well, the seat post. So you've got a lot of carbon fiber and a lot of lighter weight components like the better drivetrain and motor making up that SL designation. Now, when it comes to the motor and battery, that's kind of the star of the show here. So you have the new SL motor, which is the 1.2. It's the lighter weight or SL super light motor, and it has up to 320 watts, which may not sound like a lot at first glance, but it's also got 50 Newton meters of torque. Now, when we compare that to the previous generation, the last version of the SL Turbo Vado had about 240 watts and around 35 Newton meters of torque. So we've had a really nice bump up in spec, and you can really feel that when you ride this bike. And then on that note, this might be, I hate to say this, one of the best, if not the best, mid-drive pedal assist feels I've ever had on a bike. It's very dialed in, and it's extremely natural feeling. This is one of those bikes, you don't feel the pedals moving for you like you do on many e-bikes. In this case, you're always doing the work. You're just way more efficient, in way better shape, and your legs feel way stronger than riding a standard e-bike. It feels very natural, and I probably can't convey that enough. Very, very well done by Specialized on this motor and how it feels when you're riding. Now, when it comes to performance, it has no trouble getting up to speed. It has no trouble hitting 28 miles an hour. And on things like hills, you're probably wondering how it performs. Well, I took it to a very steep hill we have locally here, about a 12% grade. And what I did is I tracked it with my Strava. I hit the hill and I compared the time to analog bikes in the area. So people not on e-bikes, the actual like top percentages of analog bikes in our area. And this scored in the 1%, top 1% of bikes, analog bikes heading up that hill. So while it's not like a full throttle to just shoot up a hill, it's gonna put you in a position where you're pedaling up a hill at the top 1% of cyclists in your area. To kind of put that into perspective or give you context on how it felt. The motor has all the juice you're gonna want and never really left me feeling like I wanted more. It's a very good power range, especially for a bike that's kind of designed to be your commuter, fitness, or recreational style bike. Now, when it comes to the battery on this, we do have a 520 watt-hour battery, and that is fully integrated into the frame. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering immediately, well, can it be removed? What happens if the bike has a problem? And the answer to that is yes and no. So yes, it can be removed, but it needs to be removed by a retailer. So someone certified to work on a Specialized bike. They can remove it for servicing, troubleshooting, maintenance, things like that. But it's not designed to have you just pop a key in, drop out the battery and take it inside for charging. It's not going to be doing those type of things. So just kind of wanted to clarify the differences here. Now on the plus side, it's a very clean, streamlined look. The only downside is if you do need to do maintenance and service, it'll just need to be done by a specialized retailer. And when it comes to the warranty on this battery and the e-bike motor for that matter, it's a 2-year warranty on these components or 300 charge cycles, whichever comes first. And that can be tracked in the Specialized app very easily, so it's not something you need to keep track of. All those diagnostics and things will be stored in the app profile of your Specialized bike, which we'll go into that here in just a couple minutes. Now, when it comes to range, they don't give a hard number. What they say is up to 5 hours of riding time. And at first that sounds really good. And what we did is we went ahead and put that to the test. So we did 2 tests, one on PAS1 or Eco mode, and then one on the highest PAS3 or Turbo mode. Now in Turbo mode, we got 35 miles in about 2 hours of riding. Now where it gets very cool is in Eco mode, traveling roughly 13 miles an hour, or 12.7 actually, we covered 11 hours and over 100 miles of riding, about 103, and when you include the extender that we have, then it got to 135. So 135 miles on a single charge. Now that's with the extender, and if you remove that extender, again, just over 100 miles at 103. So incredibly good range. 11 hours of riding on any bike is a very long time to get to know a bike. So I feel very close to this bike at this point. But the coolest factor about all of it is over 100 miles on a single charge. That's just really good if you want to do a super long trip, or maybe you just want to plug it in on your Sunday evening over the weekend, charge it up, and you can ride it every day to work without having to think about where your battery level is out. Lots of flexibility and versatility there in the battery and range, which is super cool. All right, now when it comes to the tires and wheel setup, we have a 700C wheel here that's wrapped in a 700 by 47C Specialized Hemisphere tire, which is kind of a commuter tire, but it's a bit more aggressive than you normally see. It's not slick. It's actually a bit more mild knobbies. It's kind of similar to what you'd see on a gravel bike. And speaking of that, kind of that 47C, that's a number I run on my personal gravel bike. So to me, these tires have a very gravelish bike feel. But what that lends to is the ability to not only commute to work, but also hit some trails and some mild off-road when you want to just kind of take this somewhere else, maybe a gravel road, maybe a small dirt trail. These tires are very versatile and can kind of do a little bit of everything. And they also have a reflective sidewall for when you're in city commuting or traffic, you can be seen by other cars' headlights. And then one cool feature on this is both the tires and the wheels are tubeless ready, and you actually already have some tubeless tape on the wheels on the inside as well. And you got Presto valves, which is not something we see as much as we'd like to these days. Now, when it comes to fenders, both the front and rear wheel have full coverage fenders, and these are a black alloy fender with really good supports built into them to hold them in place. There's no rattling. They don't feel like they're more of an afterthought. They do feel like they were designed with the bike because they're very solid in place when you're riding. Now, when it comes to those fenders, that's been a bit of a mixed consensus here at the office. Personally, when I saw the fender that went all the way down as low as it does, I started thinking it might get in the way or I would damage it. On the other hand, Ben, our mechanic, said he commuted for 8 years on a bike, and he actually went with a fender that was just as long, and he said it was awesome when you're commuting because it kept everything off of him regardless of the weather. So it's kind of a preference issue. One cool feature about it is on both the rear and the front, you have some points here, some screws, where you could actually remove this full edge piece off if you didn't want to, or like we have here, you could leave it on for full coverage, which gives you some flexibility in how much coverage you want on your fenders. And I kind of like that that's built in, so you don't have to pull it off and cut it or pull it off altogether. You kind of have some options to work with here, which is really nice. Now, when it comes to racks and mounting points, We do have the MIC HD rear rack, which comes standard on the EQ6 carbon model. And this is rated for 27 kilograms or 60 pounds. And being MIC, it has the ability to work cross-compatibility with things like child seats and other accessories that are all MIC compatible, which you can get from a variety of retailers, which really make this just kind of wide open to customize as you see fit. Now, we also have lots of extra mounting points. So we have 2 bosses here, we have 2 more under the top tube, and then we have 2 here that we actually have the Z cage using right now. And then we also have a front fork up there with some mounting points as well, which Specialized sells a gear rack platform system called the Tubus system, which allows you to put a rack on the front fork that will allow you to hang gear off of that as well. So you can actually kit this out with gear on your front fork, gear inside your frame like frame bags or equipment, and then you also have the rear rack. So just lots and lots of options. And this right here, the Z cage, is Specialized cage that can also hold the range extender. They sell an additional range extender that has, they say, up to 40 miles or an extra 160 watt hours of juice. And it's a very nice small form factor and fits right into this water bottle cage for a pretty seamless transition. Now, when it comes to lighting, they did put a front headlight on here. It's a nice LED 500 lumen light that's built in to the stem and a kind of a unique proprietary mounting system. And then on the rear, we have a built-in taillight with the MIC HD rack, but it also has the brake light feature. So when you hit the brakes up on the levers up front, you will notify the traffic behind you that you're coming to a stop, which is good for just convenience and safety reasons. Now, when it comes to the component lineup, Specialized really did a solid job here. We have 12-speed Shimano Deore XT and SLX. So starting back here, we've got the Shimano Deore 8100 XT rear derailleur. It's a 12-speed derailleur, and that's mated to a 10-51 SLX cassette. Now up front, we've got a 44-tooth chainring, and then SRAM FC carbon cranks that are 170 millimeters in this large frame. And then you have the standard Specialized commuter, just kind of basic flat pedals with reflectors and some grip tape on them for some traction. Now, this range of 10-51 in the rear cassette with that 44 tooth, it gives you a very solid workable range to use on everything from steep climbs. You've got enough low end to really dig up steep climbs, but then you've got that top end to really get going in flats and descents. So it's just a really good usable range that I found to be very dialed in. And the best part about having things like an XT derailleur and shifters is they're just so precise and crisp in how they shift. I just like using Shimano XT. It's all solid stuff. And then you have carbon cranks. Again, the drivetrain is just really well done. Now, when it comes to brakes on this, again, they did a super good job. We've got TRP brakes, and I like the combo that they did. They went with 2-piston calipers, which is appropriate for a bike of this size and weight, but then they also did 180 rotors in the front with 160s in the rear, which is a very good combo and allows you to kind of modulate your braking and just kind of get the most out of your braking setup. I kind of run the same thing on my mountain bikes. I have a larger rotor up front and a smaller one in the back, and I just like that use I get out of it. Now, this saddle is their Bridge Sport commuter saddle, and it has their body geometry contour on it. And this is one of those things in the office some of us went back and forth on. We spent a lot of time on this bike. Remember that 11 hours we spent in the range test? So for me, after a couple hours, I was really tired of the seat, and I ride bikes a lot, so my saddle is built up to riding bikes. It doesn't get bothered by riding. I just found this to be uncomfortable after a little bit of time in there. Now, other people in the office told me I was crazy and they loved the saddle. So I don't want to say it's good or bad. It's super subjective to the person, and it's one of those things that if you like it, you're going to like it. And if you don't, it's a super easy swap for something that you like better. Now, when you move up and you talk about comfort, you have to talk about suspension. Now, this is a rigid bike by all standards, right? So you've got a rigid frame, you've got a rigid fork. Now, one of the plus sides is you've got a carbon seat post, frame, and fork, and carbon fiber does a good job of eliminating a certain amount of vibrations because carbon fiber naturally has a little bit of flex. So not only is carbon fiber super light and durable, but it's got some forgiveness and road vibrations, so you get a little bit of comfort at that level over, say, an aluminum rigid bike. But the real star of the show is this Future Shock 3.2 headset stem shock. Now, I can push on this, you might be able to see it on screen, but this little rubber boot here compresses, and you have 20 millimeters of travel, and that's an internal spring mounted in the headset. Now, when you buy this bike, it comes with 3 different springs, each having a different level of progressiveness to them or stiffness to them, and you just pop in the one that you like best for your body shape and how you hold the bike and things like that. You'll find the one that works best for you. I gotta say, when I first saw the Future Shock advertised probably a year or 2 ago, I thought it might be a little gimmicky. How much could it do for you? And then I bought my wife the Specialized Roubaix, and that one has a Future Shock. Now, I don't ride her road bikes, but she kept raving about it and how it felt so good. And I have a full carbon road bike, and so I just thought, it's probably good, but how good could it be? And then I had to spend a long time on this bike. And when I went out for the range test and my first kind of initial thoughts to ride this, I had to go back to the office after only a few miles and relook at the specs because I couldn't understand why the bike was so comfortable. After all, if you guys have been watching the channel, you've seen I've reviewed a few commuter bikes that are rigid and aluminum, and those had quite a bit of felt vibrations and just kind of fatigue in the upper body as you ride because of all the road imperfections. But when I came back, I noticed on the spec sheet, the reason was this Future Shock 3.2, and that 20 millimeters of travel, you don't see it working, or you don't feel it working, should I say, like a full front suspension fork. What happens is as you're riding, this little rubber boot is doing 20 millimeters of travel all the time, and it's just taking off the brunt of all the felt imperfections in the road, the cracks in the concrete, things like roots coming up through concrete. It's just smoothing out your ride in a very understated way that translates to a much more comfortable ride on what looks like a rigid bike. So big shout out to Specialized on this Future Shock 3.2. It just feels really good, and it makes a long ride on this bike much more doable and much more comfortable, and there's no extra space or weight associated with it, so it's just a nice upgrade altogether. All right guys, so starting here in the cockpit, as you would guess, things are neat, clean, and well done on a Specialized bike. So a black alloy bar here with a tiny slight rise to it, and then you have ergon lock-on grips on both ends with some ergonomic platforms for resting your palms. I like lock-on grips because they just, over time, they don't twist and they don't slide off. They just kind of stay right where they should, hence the name lock-on grips. Now, both sides have TRP brake levers, and then over here you have your PAS and display control button, as well as your obligatory bell that comes on all e-bikes. Now over here you have your Shimano Dior XT trigger shifters, and all in all, it's a very clean setup. Now this stem here is a bit unique. It's proprietary to Specialized because it does have an integrated mount for the front headlight, and it also houses the ability to mount the Specialized 2.3 Mastermind H3 display, which we'll go into in here in just a second. But all in all, super clean. They cable up everything, and then they go ahead and send it through the frame for internal routing and a nice clean look that just adds to what I call the kind of stealth fighter of e-bikes. But let's take a closer look at the display and the Specialized app, because once again, there's a whole lot going on there and a lot of toys for you guys to play with. All right, now I went ahead and added my phone and phone mount because we're gonna go into the Specialized app in just a moment, but let's start off with just the display. Now, Specialized calls this their Mastermind H3 display. It's 2.3 inches and has a full color layout. Now, right here on the side, you may not be able to see it, but there is a little coverable port, like a weatherproof port for USB-C connection, so you can charge your phone while you're riding as an option. And one cool thing to note, you don't have to ride this bike with the app paired to it. It's optional for you. I personally own a Specialized Turbo Vado, and 50% of the time I'd pair the app and track stuff, and the other 50% I wouldn't. It's just kind of a preference thing. You can get as much data as you want or as little as you want, but it'll work either way without the app. Now on the home screen, we've got the current PAS level in the top left, and as you go through the PAS buttons, you'll see we go to Sport and Turbo, with each having its own color profile. On the right, we've got the current time of day. Here we've got the battery indicator at 87% and the Bluetooth indicator because it is paired to my phone, as well as the speed in the center. And then the 0 with the circle around it that's kind of grayed out there is actually going to be your cadence, and that's going to be real time as you're cycling. So of course it's now because we're not pedaling, but if you're trying to focus on fitness and keeping it in that 70 to 90 cadence range, no need to add a cadence sensor to it. This bike is just already covering it and shows it right there on your display at all times. Now you can cycle through ride data by pressing this in, and you'll get various data display screens that you can track. Things like the elevation here, and then take yourself back to the home screen. And that covers kind of everything with the display. It's kind of a no frills, has everything you want and not a bunch of clutter you're not interested in. Now, if you want to really get deeper into things, we'll go into the app here. All right, so this is the home screen for the Specialized app. It'll have your bike's name. So like I said, this is the 6.0 Carbon EQ2, and that's a picture of the bike. Here you've got your Bluetooth indicator and battery indicator. On the left, you got the tune. So we'll go into that real quick because this is really kind of unique. So they have some pre-made profiles for how you want to ride your bike. or you can customize your own. So what they have here is the everyday riding, where your eco is nice and mild, and then your trail sport and turbo is going to be up on that higher end, giving you a lot more power. But if you say you're going to try to really push that battery out further, which over 100 miles on a single charge, I'm not sure where you're going, but if you wanted to, maybe you're low and you want to get home, you can go to a battery friendly mode or kind of a power saver mode, and that will just dial everything back a bit and allow you to still get your ride and pedal assist, but not at a quick rate of drain as it was before. And then they've got what they call racing, which is just basically cranking everything to 11, and you could just go as hard as you want on that. Now, you can change here the startup assist mode to when you turn the bike on, you can have the pedal assist off or in any one of the settings. And if we back out, we can go to record ride, and you'll see that you'll get a GPS map built into the app here that's going to have all your data that you probably track already. But it's got some cool things too. It's going to have your moving time, distance, and average speed, which you would expect just like a Strava app would have. But then you've also got the battery percentage of the bike. You've got your average rider power, so it's going to talk about your wattage output in there, and you've got the ability to track your rides, and it will do that when you hit, it's on now, so it's got stop or finish, so you could pause it. But once I start riding, you'll see the little blue arrow, and it'll track your whole ride, and then have all that data stored in the app when you get back home for you to look at, log, whatever you want to do with it. Now, if we go back to the home screen here, you'll also notice you have a system lock here. So when this bike pairs to your phone, it acts as your basically your AirTag for your bike. Anytime your bike is moved, when the system lock is on, it will flash the lights and make a loud audible noise, kind of an alarm system built into it, which is really nice, where you can set an individual PIN code to unlock that on your own terms. Now down below that, if you see here, we have new service inspection check, and it says optional due in 44 days. This is a service reminder for an upcoming service. You can either just click that out and ignore it, or as it said, optional here, you kind of have a choice whether you get that done. We'll look and see what it is. And this one talks about by Sunday, November 17th, it'll kind of run through what you can expect to get your bike looked at, and just make sure it's running the way it should for a new bike. And then as the bike gets older in age and the miles build up, it will get different service intervals, just like you would have with any other vehicle. Now, here you also have your annual service data, so you can kind of read up on the annual service of the bike. And the bike will send you notifications, so you'll always know when it needs service, which is really nice. Now you can go into rides here and look at previous ride data, kind of like we talked about in the map previously. And then you can go into here and you can see connected apps. You can connect things like your Garmin Connect, your Wahoo, your Strava, your Komoot, lots of connectivity there. And then you also have things like a heart rate sensor, which will pair to this either through Bluetooth or ANT+, which is kind of an industry standard, and it's nice that you can integrate it into the app. So all the health and fitness tracking you could want and ride tracking built into the app, which is super cool. Then you have your support center and contact if you have a problem with the bike. You can also change the units of measurement right here in the app. And then you've got some legal stuff that I've never read the full thing, if I'm being totally honest, and you can sign out of the app. All right, guys, so all in all, as you can see, you can get a little bit of everything out of the display and app combo. You can kind of go really deep into the bike, the settings, the speed profiles, track your rides, connect your heart and fitness information, and just really dial in this bike to work with you seamlessly on your everyday rides. And even more importantly, you can also do diagnostic checks and then kind of get the status of the bike and how it's doing overall, the overall health. So it's just a really connected, well done app, and I think Specialized has done a really solid job with this app. And like I said earlier, it's optional to use it, but if you want to get into the details, they're always here right in your pocket on your phone. So that wraps up the display and the app on the Turbo Vado. All right, friends, we're out on the new Specialized Turbo Vado SL2, and that is a mouthful of a name. So when you get on this bike, I mean, the first most glaring obvious thing is the curb appeal. This bike just has a nice, stealthy, clean look. And really, at first glance, it doesn't even look like an e-bike. And anytime you can have an e-bike that doesn't look like an e-bike, I think that's a nod to the designers and engineers. It's just a good look. Now, the riding position on this is kind of a hybrid position between upright and full-on, bent over, performance-oriented. It's kind of right in the middle. You're a little bit up. Your head's kind of looking about 10 feet, 15 feet in front of you, just naturally. And your palms naturally rest on these Ergon lock-on grips. Now, when it comes to comfort, so the bike itself is a carbon frame, carbon fork, carbon seat post, and that on its own right will go ahead and eliminate or reduce, will reduce some felt vibrations in the road. Carbon has some natural flex. But the real star of the comfort is the FutureShock 3.2. I know I've already raved about it, but it kind of can't be understated. It does a lot of the work, and 20 mils goes a lot further than you would think when it comes to felt vibration and upper body fatigue when you're riding. It's just a really cool little nifty suspension aspect. Now below the tires are the 700C by 47. Now 47 is a cool choice. So my personal gravel bike that I cover a lot of miles in on my own is a 47 tire, 700 by 47 also. And it's actually kind of a similar tread pattern as this. Some mild knobbies, something kind of built for speed but still has traction, light rolling resistance, and just kind of nimble. These are playful tires, and just the handling of the bike lends to it. So what's cool though is this has clearance for up to a 56. So you could potentially run 700 by 56, which is like a full-on 2.2 inch wide tire. So if you really wanted more traction, a bigger footstep, a little bit more confidence in your bike's ability, a wider tire is definitely a good option to go. Now the brakes are the TRP hydraulic disc brakes, and TRP is well known for making outstanding brakes, but these are no different. Up front you have a 180 rotor, and in the back a 160. And so let's go ahead and just play with the braking here. So we're going about, I don't know, 18 miles an hour. Let's go ahead and hit the brakes. Well, after we pass this person, I don't want to freak them out. Hi there. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Man, those things are good. That was going pretty quick. And I mean, really, aside from just hearing the brake pads scrub on the rotor, it's just really fast controlled. And the modularity in these, so modularity basically, once you bite and you start getting that braking power, kind of the initial bite, you can then move and adjust how hard or soft you want that braking to continue. So you really have a lot of play in that brake to dial in just how you want to stop. As far as speed goes, this bike has no trouble getting to 28. And I apologize in advance, but our screen is stuck in kilometers per hour. We got a bike that was available before. These are for sale, so might just be a glitch with this software. However, let's go ahead and get to 28. 3, 2, 1. And there we are. It just does it fast. This thing just glides. It's really fun to ride. And on top of that, you have this really well done kind of upper tier component drivetrain with the Dior XT 8100 series, rear derailleur, and a SLX cassette and XT shifters. And if you hear me shifting going up these little inclines, it's very precise, very crisp, very fast. And if you've never had an upper tier drivetrain, maybe you've only had Altus or Tourney, you almost don't know what you're missing until you ride one. And it's a really night and day experience. So whether this be a commuter for you, or whether this be your fitness ride, or whether it's just something to go play on, a good recreational bike, this bike really is pretty versatile. And with the comfort factor for what looks like a rigid bike, it's just hard to go wrong with this. It's going to be a good option for almost anybody who's looking for this style of bike. I would say if this is in your budget and this type of bike is on your radar, you owe it to yourself to at least just go give it a check, take it for a spin. I think you guys will be impressed too. But I'm going to close my mouth, finish my ride, and let's go talk to Ben, our mechanic, and get his thoughts on the Turbo Vado SL2. Hey guys, we're here with Ben, and he's going to share his thoughts on the Specialized Turbo Vado SL2. But before he does, I just want to say thank you to Feedback Sports. We've been using their racks and tools for a while now. Great stuff that they provide, but specifically this Pro HD rack. It's aluminum, lightweight, but it's ultra durable. I've got a cheap rack at home in my garage. My bikes always want to fall. It's annoying, and this rack has kind of made me fall in love with a well-built rack. So if you guys are into that kind of stuff and like working on your own bikes, I'll put a link in the description. Ben, take it away. I'm going to step out of the frame and just let you talk about, we'll kick it off with what you like.
All right, thanks, Mike. You know, the hard part about this bike is going to be me trying to shorten what I like about the bike. There's almost nothing I don't like. I could sit and talk about this thing all day long, so I'll just try to get to the main points. I like the through axle on the fork, and I always will. It's stiffer, it has a more confidence-inspiring ride, but then you think about it, on an expensive bike like this, it's also an anti-theft mechanism. A lot of guys aren't just carrying wrenches around to steal a front wheel, so that's a great thing. I always love TRP brakes. It's a great company making some of the best brakes in the market. So when you pair these brakes with this entire bike, man, it just fits the bill, absolutely. Part spec, again, I could talk about it all day. A fantastic wheel set from DT Swiss, wide, big cavity rims, so it's going to ride nice, that's a big deal. Full carbon frame and fork makes it very sleek. Super light, and with carbon, some people don't know, but the ride quality inherent with a carbon bike is it does tend to ride smoother than a heavy aluminum bike, some steel bikes. Carbon is more compliant for the rider. So this thing, A, is going to be light, but man, it's going to feel really cool when you're on this thing pedaling fast. It's a kind of a small point and a small detail to bring up, but the kickstand placement for me, they put it right here on the chainstay in the back. So if you've got limited space in your garage and you have to back it up to park, you're never going to have to worry about the pedals running into it as you go backwards. So I really like the kickstand placement. It's light, it's easy, it's kind of discreet. With this bike in particular, you can't tell it's a Specialized bike. And that's not a big deal, but on some of the Specialized bikes, it'll have the biggest Specialized logo somewhere on there, and that's cool. I'm glad that they're proud of their bikes, but this is a nice, subdued, very clean looking, nice logo. Somebody can look at this bike and they're not going to know that it's a $6,500 or $8,000 bike. It doesn't look like it, but I'll tell you what, it sure is. So I really appreciate the subdued graphics on this bike in particular.
Nice, man. What kind of things would you improve? I know there's not a lot on this, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, you know, Mike, with this one, I'm going to highlight the headlight mount. It's really cool to have a very high lumen headlight on here, but we've seen in some cases where the specific or proprietary bracket that's integrated into the stem, if this little fella breaks, and they can because it's plastic and they all do, you've got to go to a Specialized dealer or online retailer somehow to get that. I wish that it would just be a regular around the clamp style mount, or even something on the fork. That would just make it a little easier to find if and when something does break. Some of these bikes, and I still don't know why, they'll spec a great Shimano derailleur, but it's got the clutch mechanism on it. Now, this clutch mechanism, as I've mentioned before, was originally brought out mainly for downhill bikes. They're going to have a lot of spring movement, which means the chain is going to slap against the frame. Now, this doesn't have a shock, isn't a downhill bike. These clutch mechanisms can, over time, wear out quicker as a rear derailleur. I just don't think that it's necessary. And a lot of people probably don't even know what it's for anyway. So I would say, yeah, save a couple of dollars, get rid of the clutch mechanism, and then get on your way. I do like plastic fenders more than metal, but in this case, Specialized has chosen alloy fenders, so they're nice and light. They don't vibrate, they don't make any noise. And one standout thing, and I'm going to mention a like, and it's not part of the deal, but as the fender, they've got a plastic or rubber flap that goes all the way down around the wheel here. Now, why is that a good thing? So a lot of years ago, I commuted in northern Utah without a car for probably 7 or 8 years. So what you're going to see is a lot of slush days, a lot of heavy rain days, and it's cold. Water will always spray off of the wheel unless you've got it going down around the lower circumference of the tire. I think that's a really cool idea. I've never seen anything like that unless it's been custom modified. So I say, good job, Specialized. Overall, this bike is absolutely awesome and worth every penny.
Awesome, Ben. Well, man, once again, thanks for your thoughts on this.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, guys, so the Turbo Vado SL2, I've spent all week with it, and I gotta say, it just feels like Specialized has set a new bar for what a good commuter e-bike should be. It's nice, it's lightweight, powerful, it's spec'd out with excellent components, carbon frames and cranks, and it's just a bike that if you're looking for a commuter bike or some kind of a fitness recreational bike, or heck, you could even turn this into a sick flat bar gravel bike, you can just kind of do what you want with it. But if you're looking for this style of bike, this one deserves a serious look on your part. Now, if you guys have any questions about this, we just got this ourselves, and you guys may have some questions popping up, like we currently don't know the max payload. We're gonna update this when we get that, but drop them down in the comments. I will definitely reach out to Specialized and get them answered for you. And until then, while you're here, Like and subscribe if you're feeling generous. And until then, I'll see you guys out on the trail before the next review.